Alright. Where we at, people? Where we at? Alright, let me just point this way. Make sure the volume can be heard. Right. Just gonna share this. Let some people tune in. Ahlan wa sahlan, guys. If you can just let me know that the volume is coming through okay. Right, so I can see it. Alright, so. Alright, people. Alright. Come on. Right, so, alright. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا Juaning Layth, bienvenidos a todos, Pacher Ragle, and people, Swagatam, and of course, I must add, Tablighi aa gayi hai, Tablighi. Alright. So, people, what is going on? What is the... Somebody said, look, they just woke up. You woke up just in time. See, Allahu Akbar. Today, it might be a bit shorter of a session, so I'm going to try to actually... I'm getting... Sometimes some people are saying I'm not actually dealing with the questions people are posting, so I'm going to try to deal with a few of them today. The actual questions. Alright, Abu Ayyub, doing it. What are our thoughts, first of all? Our thoughts on what's going on. Yaqub, ahlan wa sahlan. Abu Zahra, tabdili aa nahi rahi hai, tabdili aa gayi hai. That's the thing, man. I tell you what, whilst people are tuning in, what are my thoughts on... Somebody saying, Dadyal Sharif, huh? Big up Dadyal, massive, huh? You know, there's that that meme, not meme, but that short dubbed clip of Akshay Kumar. Main Dadyal na gangster. Anyway, people, so what kind of trouble we getting into today? Well, Sajda, let's see what we can bring on. So first of all, whilst people are still tuning in, bienvenidos a todos, people. That's what I'm talking about. Mi gente, ¿qué está pasando? And whilst they're doing that, let's just catch up some thoughts. Somebody reminded me, I need a haircut. I don't know, do I? I thought I just had one a few days ago. But about this whole Imran Khan thing and Pakistan, what is going on, people? So let me just share my thoughts whilst people are tuning in. What do I think? I mean, I'm obviously an Imran Khan fan, as it is, for PM, that is, for being a Prime Minister. I'm not actually into sports, so I don't, I can't really say I truly appreciate that aspect, because I don't really understand it and I'm not fascinated by it. But as far as him being Prime Minister, people, wow, I gotta say, Imran Khan is doing it. A bit of a hiccup, I think, with that whole Qadiani thing. There was this whole, you know, where he had that, what's his name, Atif Mia, who is meant to be an economics expert, you know, like, I mean, award-winning kind of, like, internationally acclaimed and renowned for his kind of contribution. So Imran Khan had made him the minister for economics, or I mean for the economy, sorry, and that had triggered a huge backlash. The Mulvis, you know, these Mulvis, they never there's no peace when it comes to these Mulvis. So they were like, we're not taking any of that. So anyway, he backed out of that, and I think that was a bit of a hiccup in my analysis, because I think, like, I suppose he underestimated the mullah. The mullahs, he probably thought, yeah, they'll probably do a bit, but then he realized, no, I need to keep the peace. Fair play. I mean, I can understand why he then backed out, because he probably thought, look, I've got much greater things going on. This is going to sabotage the whole project too early in. So I understand that. The other thing, I really want to commend his work, and I think a lot of people haven't really clocked it, the genius of it, people. Oh, by the way, I'll show you some of these. I've had some Urdu books come in on poetry. I'll show you. That's not Hitler, by the way. You're probably thinking, what? Hitler wrote in Urdu? That's Josh Malihabadi, right? So, that Tash, behave, Josh. AKA Josh. Josh means like, the enthusiasm, or in Arabic, Hamas, Hamal. It does actually mean that, Josh. But anyway, coming back to, I think people haven't truly appreciated the strategy of what Imran Khan is doing. I'm telling you, people, with this dam project, I don't mean dam as in goddamn, but this to build a dam, or to build 2 dams, water dams in Pakistan. He said, look, I don't want to take money from the IMF, so what I'm going to do is we as Pakistanis will raise this money. Those who are national, local, regional Pakistanis, and those who are expats throughout the world, I plead to them. You see, right, what somebody's saying, is my hair? I think that's just the light really reflecting. But, so the whole thing, look at that, the gel, people, the gel. The spikes, right? So, you see, what people don't understand about what Imran Khan is doing, this is much greater than raising 14 billion rupees for the, or dollars. Is it dollars or rupees? I think it's got to be dollars. Anyway, right? So he's got a target of 14 billion and he's got everybody on this. You see, this isn't about, I don't think anyway, for me as just trying to analyze what's going on, he's managed to unify the nation on a project that will bring welfare. Now, let's say you're an average Pakistani living in Pakistan. The government comes and it builds a dam. So you probably say, about time. Typical human response. You probably say, about time, we need 3 more, by the way. You see, but what he's done, it's $14 billion, Shukran Abu Zahra. Right now, what he's done is he's got everybody involved. Like, he's saying, contribute whatever you can. Even if it's 100 rupees, 50 rupees, let's do local, let's get international people involved. But people, those who are contributing, so in the cities in Pakistan, they're giving like 50 rupees, which is nothing really. But you see, what they feel is that we are doing this. This is our thing. Like let's say when that dam, apart from the fact that he's made huge strides, astronomical strides, I mean, he's raised already several $1 billion within just weeks. But that aside, when this dam is built, people will feel that I built that. You understand? They will think that, like, because they kind of rallied for it, or they contributed 50 rupees or £1 or $2, they will feel that it was them. And this sense of pride that we can get things done, it is an amazing strategy. I think people have underestimated what he's doing here. It's not just getting people to raise money, but it's actually unifying a collective spirit, and then at the same time making people feel that things can actually happen and we are a part of these things. I think it's amazing. Anyway, that's my international political talk. So obviously in the UK, when it happens with Corbyn, alright, I'm sure Corbyn will come out with some amazing strategies as well. But that's me and my prophecies for the future, people. Book of Revelations. So what else is going on? Let's take a look at some of these questions. What is happening? Did the Prophet actually win those wars where he was outnumbered by plenty? You know, somebody asked me this the other day. Somebody's asking my thoughts on the collective consciousness. I like that. I like it. You. You know, my other clip, I see that in so many places, by the way. You know that, you teasing me, you know. God. Well, what the hell? At least some message of mine is getting out there somewhere. Right, so why did Muawiyah radiallahu anh hand over the caliphate to Yazid? Because I think he was dying. Was that the question? Or you mean why him as opposed to somebody else? Is that the question? Right, so let's backtrack. What was the first... right, somebody asked me this, that did the Prophet and the Muslims overcome the, you know, against the odds, these other armies and things like this? And I believe absolutely they did, and I don't see why that is so shocking. People, you can't really see that there, but some pink tea. This is Kashmiri chai, people, Kashmiri chai. Right, so, as I was saying, like if you take, somebody asked me the Battle of Badr, if you take 300 versus 1,000, now that is triple the amount, but these numbers are not, I mean, they are obviously staggering from one angle, but 300 people is not a small number of people. It creates enough to kind of bolster and boost the morale that people can get things done. Like they can. It's not, you know, it's not like 5 people and you're seeing 100 people. It's not quite like that, because at a certain point, even though, like let's say now, I give an example. Let's say these are 3 times the number. So if one person was standing there and he sees 3 people coming up to him, the kind of fear that he would have, or let's say there's 2 of them and there's 6 people, or let's say there's 3 of them and 9 people are coming, or 10, you know, 3 and 10. Now, although the ratio fits 300 to 1,000, but that same effect is not received when you are 300. Because even though it is still a static ratio, that it is still 1,000 to 300, which would be reduced to 10 to 3, but it's not the same effect. Because 300 proliferate. And because the mind can't calculate so easily, it just sees crowds, that's all it sees. It doesn't actually, whereas 10 people, it can actually just 10 people in front of it and 3, but when you are 100 or 300, that's just a crowd, a large crowd, versus another crowd which may be larger, but it's still a crowd. So it doesn't have the same impact. And then I must say that Islam has always had this spirit, this kind of, that where it was, even the Battle of Badr is a good example of defensive warfare, really, but that Muslims have had this amazing kind of warrior spirit about them, especially throughout our history, and you know, especially throughout the lifetime of the Prophet and even after. And you will see that they stood their ground, and that is something very, I mean, to me it's very believable that when people have a faith in something, that faith outweighs many numbers. It's like that kind of spirit that they have is incredibly powerful, that it can preponderate over several in numbers. That's my understanding. Not just about strategy, I think sometimes determination. Like people sometimes, when they see the kind of almost like they see that a people are prepared to die for their faith. That is a very scary kind of opposition, especially since the other opposition is not there with that kind of frame of mind. They're there just to kind of as opportunists. It really does come down to sometimes the hearts and minds of the people participating. Like how many people are against Malm but he's still winning? Wah, Geo Imran Khan, Geo. Somebody had asked the question on right, so by the way, those of you trying to post your questions, I'm going to try to deal with your questions today. Try to keep them as concise and precise, because for some reason I can't, it doesn't allow me to open up the comments, to expand the comments. So I can only just see the 1.5 line of whatever you write. The second question was on the collective consciousness. I am inclined towards this kind of belief that there is this kind of collective consciousness. I don't know exactly how it works. But I think it's what kind of connects us all. And that we have some vague connection to one another through this kind of collective consciousness. And I feel that this collective consciousness has somebody just cracking a joke about tables have now turned 8-on-1 on the traffic ward. That's naughty, trying to crack me up, make me crack jokes on something that's a sensitive issue. That was, by the way, that was utterly disgusting and despicable. I did share the video clips, and I've heard 1-2 people have been arrested. I hope all the perpetrators are arrested, and I hope that justice is served for them, because these people make Muslims look horrendous. Okay. So, coming back to this question on collective consciousness, I do feel that there is collective consciousness. I feel that this consciousness, there's almost like a feedback, subtle, maybe it feeds back into the unconscious mind, this kind of loop, where hence it reflects the ethics of an age as well. So, in a certain age, people sometimes fall out of flavor with certain ideas, or certain ideas sometimes just take over in a certain day and age. Certain discoveries are made almost coincidentally at different parts of the world. I think these all tie into things like that collective consciousness or unconsciousness, however you want to refer to it. I don't believe it's so vividly connected, like, that we can just telepathically communicate, but I believe there is some subtle underlying kind of connection, and I think maybe it's out there somewhere, and maybe we can tap into it using our brains. That's what I think. A bit like light, the way the kind of visual cortex can, the light reflects, it picks it up on this kind of sensory. Using its kind of apparatus, we get images, detailed, colourful, bright images of what's going on, but really there is no light inside our brain. It's simply the brain's ability to be able to read that and tap into it. So in a similar way, I feel maybe that at a quantum level, that's what's happening with consciousness. Maybe. These are just some thoughts. I don't know. I kind of... and there is a fascinating hadith from the Prophet that al-arwah junudun mujannada, that the ruh is something that is kind of compounded together, almost, and I just feel that that's maybe that, because to me the ruh is consciousness. That's what I feel the ruh is. So it kind of makes a lot of sense then, and that this is what is special about humans, and this is what Allah said, that وَنَفَخْنَا فِيهِ, now we breathed into Adam min ruhina, from our ruh, and that is what I think, in my understanding, was consciousness, and that is kind of connected ever since with people, and it's interesting. And then you see, and hence the understanding that when a person dies, that this, maybe it's a consciousness that we kind of go into, and it is from Allah and onto Him we return. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That onto Him we return. And maybe, and this is why, if you think about it, all the things in the Quran, when people were asking, Allah would answer. But when they asked about consciousness or about ruh, if the ruh is consciousness, the answer is وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, that you've only been given a small understanding of what the ruh is. So Allah does not go on to explain it, because maybe it was too complicated to understand. So I don't know, these are some thoughts, some kind of ideas. أفكاري زفت إليكم من فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. Why does everything Muslims do is seen as Islamic by non-Muslims, grooming gangs, etc.? Yeah, I mean, it is. You see, we are under the kind of microscope, so to speak, so we have to be more vigilant of our kind of behavior. You know, when Muslims do things, it represents, I mean, I don't think there is such thing as a community left, but whatever that means, this loose term, community, I think it reflects the whole of the community, so to speak. Right, so, Ben, what the hell? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, Sarah, Irfan, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, so what was the other question? Right, I've been asked, a few people have been asking me about I've been having so many questions, people asking me about the Shia thing. They've been asking, which by the way, the brothers will be releasing the next, the remaining parts of the interview. But it's because they have the ma'atam, the kind of, the morning 10 days of Muharram, so it'll be after that they'll release the remaining part of the interview. Right, so somebody's asking about the barzakh. Okay, I'll get to that. So this question I've been asked now quite a bit, especially since my interview with the Shia, that look, can you please clarify? Can you please clarify? So why are you condemning certain people who are, you know, highlighting inconsistencies about the Shia thing? Or why are you doing this? Or why are you doing that? And I've had so many people kind of message me, and people have been WhatsApping me, and people have been Facebook messengering me, and I don't know, all these kind of things. So now, okay, let's explain. What the hell? Let's get this over and done with, huh? So look, I want to make something very clear. As far as you see, there's a few things being asked. What are my views on the Shia beliefs, for example? That's a lot of people are asking me. And then what am I doing, and why am I condemning some of these other people, Sunni people, who who are going and having debates and stuff like this. What's the green books behind you? Well, there's a lot of green books behind me. These over. This right here is Abu Bakr ibn Arabi's commentary on the Muwatta called Al-Masalik. It's one of his final commentaries. Right, so these few things, if I take a look at these, what are my views on the Shia? Look, first of all, I want to say something that, look, I do, and this will tie in as a loop, that what am I doing and why am I condemning those people? Because I believe that the way forward is one of unity. This does not mean uniformity. It does not mean that, you know, we must all be identical in beliefs. We will never be identical in beliefs. I can tell you that as a fact. The Shia they're a totally different denomination, a sect, to the Sunnis. Like, there's never going to be symmetry. Even within the Sunnis, you cannot get symmetry, not between the Salafis, the people who follow madhabs, even within the madhabs, even, you know, whoever, Deobandis and Brailvis, and there is not going to be uniformity, okay? We need to get that clear, and I'm not calling for a uniformity. I'm calling for a unity of purpose, to kind of be able to move forward with some unity of purpose, that, look, we can accept that we're different, but we don't need to hate each other. That's my point. Now, so because I want to clarify that it's not. So when it comes to the Shia beliefs, one thing okay, somebody, by the way, sent me a link. And I got a few people commenting, saying to me that, look, you know, you mentioned Ammar Naqshwani in your interview. Are you up to date with the stuff he's been saying? Now, I just want to clarify, I'm not at all up to date with any of the things he's been saying, or what any of the things the Shia community have been saying. I'm not up to date with these things. And I don't claim to be up to date with these things. I have made one thing clear, that, look, I condemn abuse. Okay, abusing the companions, abusing the wives of the Prophet, to me is utterly unacceptable. It is despicable. I do not accept these things. Provided we can agree on that, and several of the Shia agree on that, including many of the Ayatollahs, Ayatollah Sistani, Ayatollah Khomeini. I mean, there's Khomeini and there's Khomeini. Another, I think his name is Ali Khomeini, Ayatollah. His fatwa are very clear on this. It's haram to abuse any of the symbols of the Ahl Sunnah. It's haram to. So, look, many of the Shia follow this understanding. They do not abuse. They accept that. And that's, alhamdulillah, once that is not an issue, the rest is simply your opinion, my opinion, his opinion. It's, you know, we will have our individual opinions, but let's not have hatred. Either, now there's two things moving forward. Either we don't discuss these issues between ourselves, because it's just going to cause unnecessary bad blood, or we can discuss them, but in that case, we don't allow them to generate a hatred between us. So that's my view on the whole Shia thing. I also believe that, look, commonly speaking, most Shia and most Sunnis don't have a clue about what it means to be a Sunni or a Shia. They're just born that way, and they just live that way. So we shouldn't really be kind of spewing hatred. Okay, that's my general message. Now, as to my actual views on the Shia beliefs, I disagree with most of the Shia beliefs entirely. and I don't shy to, I'm not shy in any way to say that. I do find many, and I've said in the past, people have, some people try to share some of my clips from the past and things like this, but I do say, look, I do say that I find many of these things absurd, I find many of these things irrational, and me, I'm somebody very inclined heavily, as you're aware, to the voice of reason. And although the Shia do have many things that are in line with the voice of reason, but the Shia faith is pretty much predicated in emotion. And hence I would, because I don't believe faith ought to be predicated in, rather in reason, I believe it ought to be predicated, and therefore I would disagree massively with a lot of the things that they say. And I don't just mean, obviously I'm talking about those who agree that abuse topic I'm not even getting into, because that the Shia I've got in mind, who I believe, inshallah, and I hope are the majority, do not abuse. So that is not the discussion. The discussion is things like, whether they want to speak about virtues, or which personally I think is a useless discussion, but just other things as well along the way, the concept of imams, of there being 12 imams, of imams being ma'soom, infallible, incapable of sin. Things like this, to me, obviously on a reason-based things, do not add up. They do not make sense to me. And I do not accept these things based on the voice of reason and based on evidence and things like that. I don't. That's my views are very clear on stuff like this. Okay, the fact that there's a 12th Imam who's awaiting and he will be the Mahdi, obviously I don't accept that. I don't accept there's going to be a Mahdi, full stop. So it's not that my views are not clear. My views are very clear. My views have been, in fact, more clear than most of these Sunnis. I've actually said in the past, I've spoken, in defense of Muawiyah radiallahu anh, and said that, to me, I accept that, if people want to say maybe Muawiyah radiallahu anh made several mistakes throughout his lifetime, I accept that. I'm sure everybody has made mistakes throughout their lifetime, but to me, he is somebody that was an amazing personality, and I feel that his ability as an astute ruler is quite unparalleled throughout Muslim history, and that's a view that I still hold. And that's not to mean he was never made mistakes. Of course, one of them was, I do agree that I think Yazid was not the most apt or the most suitable to be caliph. I accept, and for whatever reason he gave the caliphate to him, that was one of the questions tonight. I disagree with that. But that said, I still feel that him as a personality is an amazing personality, and that's within, obviously that's the Sunni belief, but that is my clear understanding, and I've defended that passionately in the past. But that, you see, and to the extent that a few years ago, and this was one of my discussions actually, by the way, one of my discussions was with the Shia was that, look, I've watched several videos and tried to be as objective as possible, and I've seen several Shia kind of clerics critique a lot of the companions, and I've tried to be very objective and impersonal and try to just see that, can I see what they're saying? And I could see, it's difficult to refute a lot of what they're saying if there's those who are being academic. Not the emotional ones, but those who are being academic. It's difficult, except when I said at the end, the issue is that I don't see them being consistent either with their principles, because if you were to be consistent, then that criticism, either you don't criticize any of the companions, or you must equally criticize Ali radiallahu anh. You can't just say we'll criticize them all, but we won't criticize Ali. Because then it applies to everybody. Either there's a protective barrier or there's no barrier. And I would say let there be a barrier and we don't criticize anybody. But and it's not about criticizing, but about critiquing, about trying to find faults. Because I would say if you did try to find faults, then it's true, you could find faults. With many of the companions, you could, some faults, human faults, they were all human beings, you could find faults. But then that in no way would exclude Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anh. It would include him as well. And this becomes the point where I say that the Shia become incredibly emotional, and that objectivity completely disappears. But you see, my point has been now, okay, this is the whole, the kind of, the dialogue, this has been my position. But what is the benefit in us sitting down today and trying to spew up, bring up all these kind of issues, these kind of to kind of like let's say, like we see some people, they're going to Hyde Park or they're going to different places, they're opening all the Shia books and saying, look at this mistake, look at this mistake, look at this, or look at this. And I just feel that, what is the purpose of this? Because all you're doing is spewing hatred, and I don't see any benefit in that. And I see that you're just making Muslims look silly. Many common Sunni and Shia do not even know these things. You're just bringing up issues. You're not building bridges, you're burning bridges. Right, so somebody's asked about the references to Muawiyah radiallahu an instigating Imam Hassan's poisoning in Tariq al-Tabari. There may be. I mean, I think, you see, Abu Ja'far al-Tabari is interesting. He's an interesting character, because I actually, okay, this is my leaning. I actually do feel that Abu Ja'far al-Tabari was kind of Shia, or he definitely wasn't clearly Sunni, in my understanding. I know the Sunnis claim him as just a clear Sunni, but I don't think he was. In my understanding, and scholars have written about this, that Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi, Abu Ja'far al-Tabari, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, his kunya is Abu Ja'far, he was actually, in my understanding, a Shia, or he was kind of borderline, as in he was part Shia, part maybe from a Sunni, but kind of turned Shia-esque. Hence, he includes a lot of these things. And the same thing, and this is my research, the same thing about people like Ibn Shihab Zuhri. I believe that Ibn Shihab Zuhri, who's one of the teachers of Imam Malik, although began his life very kind of not in line with the Shia, but I believe later on in his life became a kind of covert Shia. And hence he forwards a lot of the whole Shia theological dialogue into the Sunni discourse. If you look at it, it all seems to come through Ibn Shihab Zuhri. And hence Imam Malik becomes very skeptical of him towards his later age. And I just find that interesting. I mean, this can't be proven 100%, except in many of the Shia biographies, they do include Ibn Shihab Zuhri as a Shia. In some of them they reject him, but in others they actually embrace him. So it's interesting, Tabari definitely was independent, but I do believe in my understanding, he was, I'm saying he's independent as a mujtahid, in looking at fiqh, but he, in my understanding, was either a Shia or Shia-esque. He was kind of, hence he brings, he floods the whole thing with Shia narrations. Abu Mikhnaf and all these other people, he brings all their narrations. But, I mean, that's a discussion, that's an academic discussion. So, right, so this is the whole, see, so you can see from my understanding, this is where I stand in terms of my own theological understanding, my beliefs. But I feel that, like, in terms of what's happening with the Sunni Shia thing, why are we at each other's throats? I don't get it, because nobody's going to change. And this is something I said to, and by the way, I commend, and I appreciate Sayyid Raza, actually, and I know I don't need to say this, but I will say this because I appreciate this. You see, he actually contacted me after our dialogue, and our dialogue was amazing. We had it was a great kind of evening, and after that, like maybe 2 weeks later or a week later, he contacted me and he said to me, and these are his words, and I dearly appreciated them. he said to me that, look, he said to me that, Mufti, you know, he first of all, he really appreciated this whole thing that I was doing and my message of love, and building bridges. But he did say, and he said to me, look, don't in any way feel that you need to be compromised on your beliefs. Like, whatever your beliefs are, at the end of the day, that's what they are. Like, don't think that, you know, oh, because, you know, I don't know, like, let's say we're very friendly or we're like this, that you need to somehow shy away from your beliefs. He said, like, have them, like, whatever they are. Like, if you've, and his word, although I haven't done this, but his words were, look, he said, I know you crack jokes and you mock people. If you mock us, I mean, if you crack a joke, what the hell, is no big deal. You know, you do these things all the time. Don't feel that these things, but don't feel that you need to shy away just because we've been friendly. That's all. Like, you know, we're mature enough to understand that about each other. And I dearly appreciated these words of his. But I mean, that was my message regardless. My message was, look, you can hold on to your beliefs, but let's have a message of hope. And I think it's unfair that, look, somebody sent me clips of the whole Shia thing. The reason I'm addressing this with a bit of detail is because I've had so many people message me about this, yeah. Now, people have sent me things, and look, and people are sending me this, you know, the tatbir thing of, like, beating yourself and so. And look, I condemn all of this. But so do several Shia condemn it. I'm pretty sure Ayatollah Khomeini has declared it haram, because it is horrific to look at. It doesn't, self-harm is haram, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so I do not, and I think it does give a very bad image to Islam. That's my understanding. Right, but some people had sent me these things saying, look, oh, look here what the Shia are saying, look here what they're saying, look here. I want to say, look, but this is a two-way street. If you watch these debates, the Sunnis are equally provoking a lot of the Shia, a lot of the time. Like, I watched a few, I stopped watching them. I stopped watching these Hyde Park things, because they were just really, they were taking my mind into a negative place where I just did not want to be. Okay, so but in these places, like, I was watching some of these clips before, and like Hyde Park is an example, they will be speaking to some of the Shia, and the amount of heckling that will happen from the crowd around, it is unacceptable. It's atrocious. People, they will say things like the Shia guy is talking to the Sunni, so they're talking, and some guy they will just say kafir, kafir, Shia, kafir, kafir, Shia, kafir, and they'll just say things. And, like, let's say the Shia guy will say, yeah, but in the Quran, and then somebody from there will just say, yeah, but Shia don't believe in the Quran. I mean, why are you doing this? What the hell is that about? And this is gonna aggravate people. If somebody kept saying that about me, then I am gonna react. So naturally, they're saying these things to the Shia, and they're cussing their imams. And people were saying things about, oh, you believe in 12 demigods, you believe in, you know, saying about the Shia, to the Shia, you believe, like, oh, you're 12 demigods, you're 12 superheroes, you're 12. Like, what is this about? Like, why are you... So naturally, the Shia are going to then react and criticize some of the companions. So somebody criticized then, criticized in turn, like Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and said, yeah, and this turned into a whole debate. But my point was, look, this is a two-way street. You know, people are standing there cussing them, saying that they don't believe in Allah, they don't believe in the Quran, they believe in 12 gods, and they believe in this, and they believe in this, and they believe in this, and believe in this, and this is not what the Prophet taught you. Now, these are not the manners of a Muslim. Okay, so when you're going to engage in dialogue like that, you're going to get... I'm sorry, I'm talking about this. And we've got Abu Zakaria here saying, Mushrik Layth. May Allah blacken your face. Why is black? Is black some kind of curse, is it? Abu Zakaria, you racist. Racist. Abu Zakaria the racist. We've got Abu Zakaria the KKK. Why is black some kind of like curse, is it? Is that when those people who are black are cursed? Is that how you believe? Disgusting people. Disgusting. See, Abu Zakaria, you are a good argument for contraception. If people could time travel and visit your parents and just take away that chicken vindaloo that night and say, trust me, hand them some and say, you'll thank me in years to come. Alright, so there you go. Blocked. Mocked and blocked. That's what I'm talking about. Right, so let's move on to some of the other questions. I love the way that guy came on and said, excuse me, Layth, and then just went on to say, may God curse you. Yeah, that reminds me of, that's like when you're being all courteous and you've got etiquettes, right? You've got all the etiquettes, but you're actually just trying to insult the person at the same time. It's like I overheard this conversation once. I say conversation, it was a verbal abuse kind of slinging match going on. So the guy, so he was saying, it was unacceptable obviously, but I overheard it from a distance, and the person saying, is going on in Patwari, he's saying, he's swearing to this woman's mother and this and that, and it's a husband-wife scenario. And he's saying, your mother's this and your mother's that and her this and her that, and he's proper laying in, verbally, not holding back. And then she responds by saying, Tusani vi ben. So she responds by swearing back, but she begins with Tusani, like aapki bhi, it's like, so she begins with respect. I was like, wow, I like it. I like it. So that's, somebody's asking, Al-Qalab is asking, are you gay? Huh? You nutty. Al-Qalb, you do realize this isn't a private message going on. You do realize that the whole world is watching you, trying to message me to ascertain whether or not I am inclined like you. Al-Qalb, heart, the heart, people, the heart, the heart. Dil mera dak dak dole. So, we've got Yaqub asking the question about Barzakh. My son, 9-year-old, is he drank to you? Well, there you go. I drink back. What are your views on explain music? What does shaitan? Look at all of this. Why not? Maybe you can give a fatwa. Al-Qalb is back, people. Our fellow brother Qalb. Qalb, don't you worry, huh? You enjoy yourself. You're naughty. I think, look at this. Allah, 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 Allah. We've got somebody. When you're, I can't. Damn. Alright, so I was trying, but my screen kept moving, so okay. I have much respect for what God has given you knowledge. However, and the rest of it I can't click. You wanted to write more. And Samir Tariq is saying, Kusra. Seriously, Samir, are these the thoughts that are coming into your mind when you're seeing me? You're getting homosexual thoughts. I'm getting quite the concerned, you know. This is quite the concerning, you know. So I think brother needs some help, you know, some help. Right. What are my biceps? I don't think my biceps are doing it for these people. I don't know. I think it's don't know what it is. Right, so let's take some questions, people. I have much respect for you. Right, I can't read the rest of your question because I can't open up the... when is Ashura? Ashura is the 10th of Muharram. Okay. What are your views on the events of Karbala? I've mentioned this before. You can search it on YouTube. My views are... I've discussed them before. Let's just leave it to that. Let's not stir up any other sentiment right now. What's your opinion on adoption? I think I've answered this before, that I think adoption is amazing and awesome, and people should definitely try to encourage these endeavors. I also believe that in this day and age, that the adoption process ought to serve as a mahramiyya process. So one becomes automatically a mahram. That's my ijtihad, people. My fatwa. That's what I'm talking about. Huh? My fatwa, people. I put it down on the table. That's what I'm talking about. So, but I believe that this is... you know, it's not just... This is the bee's knees, people. Abu Faith Hamadi Hana. Say my name. Abu Faith Hamadi is BNL. What's BNL? Blocked. Alright, so... Alright, that's the admin. Alright, admin. You're doing it, you're doing it. What are intoxicants and are they all haram? Right, so intoxicants are not... sorry. Whoa. This is why you shouldn't answer in a state of being intoxicated. So this is... I almost just made a blunder there. And, right, people. Alright, hi. I'm Mufti Abu Layth and I'm an... Is this not the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, is it? Where are we? Is this not the 12 steps? What are we? Right, so intoxicants. Intoxicants. Hey, well, rather. Let me have... May one have one's drink whilst... So... You see, intoxicants, it depends what we mean by intoxicants. So there's some things which are clearly haram, and there's some things, some drinks which have a very small, tiny amount of intoxication that it doesn't really, like let's say 2% alcohol or 1% alcohol in them, that you would have to, in a normal given drink consumption, you wouldn't really get intoxicated unless you had an excessive amount. Unlike regular alcohol, which in a normal regular consumption you would get intoxicated. So on this thing that I'm saying, so situation A, this is what the Hanafi ulama said was not haram. And that is the view that Uthaymeen also expressed, And hence they say in Saudi Arabia you can buy all these beers and things that are like 1% or 2% alcoholic. Not that I've been there and had those. You know what it is? By default, I'm kind of intoxicated all the time. I don't get it, honestly. It's like, I think I'm just like naturally so high. Like I don't. This is why I wouldn't have a need for intoxication. So this is blessed, you know, the blessing, the divine blessing, you know. So WKD has 5% alcohol. Yeah, well, that would be clearly haram. But I'm just giving the difference of opinion here. What the Hanafi madhab said was a minute amount that in a regular consumption, so let's say 2-3 glasses of it wouldn't really intoxicate you. But if you were to drink a barrel, you'd definitely be ill. But regular consumption would not intoxicate. That's what Uthaymeen on YouTube has his fatwa, and that's the Hanafi madhab as well. Right, so high on e-numbers. Islamic view on marijuana. Marijuana. Ew, Samir. Samir's a troll, by the way. Admin, Samir. No, Samir. MashaAllah, brother. Assalamu alaikum. Admin. Right, so my view on marijuana, on cannabis, I've spoken of previously. And I've given the details that I think it's difficult to declare things haram unless you have the categorical proof for them, although they can still not be something that you would encourage people to do, so you can still condemn them. But they may not necessarily be haram per se. So psychedelics, I think these things really come back to the level of you see, psychedelics, it depends on the level of danger associated with them. I don't think psychedelics per se, for being a psychedelic, would be haram per se, but I think the danger associated with it may render some of them haram and some not. So maybe things like light mushrooms and things like that, maybe not so much, but maybe powerful things that make people totally trip and go mental, maybe that may be haram. What about perfume with alcohol? Yeah, Marwan, just don't drink perfume, mate. Somebody get Marwan a drink. Otherwise, brother, Marwan is going to knock back one of these. It's going to be like Tom Ford. Right, so do we as Muslims need to follow madhhab? Amy Adiyaman. Amy, we don't need to follow madhhab, as in it's not an obligation, although it's the common sense way to learn or to gain a detailed understanding of the deen. I would advise, some people have asked me about studying a madhhab, I definitely advise learning through a madhhab as opposed to no madhhab, because it's like asking, should we have structure or the lack of structure? I think structure always works out better, and a madhhab is common sense, although I don't believe you're necessarily bound to a madhhab, like people would like to say you are. I am very passionate about the school of Medina. Somebody was asking me just yesterday about the Hanafi school, and I'm like, Hanafi school? Come on, people. The Hanafi school has... are there still Hanafis around? Like, no, I'm only joking. The Hanafi school is an amazing school, although it's died a death, people. But I would definitely say, if you're thinking of studying a madhhab, okay, there's two versions. One's the nice diplomatic version. Study whatever you feel good, and if you're a Hanafi, study Hanafi, and if you're blah blah. Anyway, boring, put that aside. The real version, just study Maliki Fiqh, people. The school of Medina, that's what I'm talking about. All the way, people, all the way. Hanafi madhab is an amazing madhab, but in all honesty, they've kind of really messed it over. It's driven it to the ground. A lot of the Hanafis have. So it's a sinking ship. I never said that. Did I say that? It's a sinking ship. Who said that? Who said Right, so, right. What's going on? Do actions like hanging, hugging, Jamal Saqib, you nutty. Do actions like hugging, kissing, intercourse, what the hell is this? Are you turning this into some kind of erotica? Do they break an iddah and automatically create a Do they automatically create a reconciliation? Halfway during intercourse, you're like, oh, well, one is wondering, has this automatically incurred a reconciliation? Well, well, that's one way of putting it. That's it, automatically created a... I think that's the least of the things it's creating. So, yeah. So, I think muwatta.com for PDF. Right, so I think, does it trigger a reconciliation? I would think it does. I think, you know, those things, in between those things, you've usually kind of reconciled. So, yeah, it kind of does. So, Semi, your laugh is well, shukran. Right, Fawzia, Sarah, Abid, ahlan wa sahlan. Right, what are the questions, people? What are the questions? How to start studying Maliki Fiqh? Well, just go to YouTube. You can watch my video there on the prayer. We've got a detailed video, and we've got the fundamental courses on YouTube. Ashmawiya text in 6 lectures. Pillars of Islam, called the Foundations of Islam, in 20 lectures, all available. And many other things. I think Sheikh Hamza Yusuf's got a few courses as well, in addition to several other people. But that's quite a few things there. I asked twice a question, but no reply to it. Zulki G is saying, I got no reply. Question and the sacrifice of his son and answering claims. Saraj, I can't see the rest of your question. Robin saying, Maliki Fiqh rock. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. You know, somebody asked, let me tell you how rocking Maliki Fiqh is, people. Maliki Fiqh is where I'm telling you, where all the creativity was happening. It's where it was all happening. You know, where people in their day and age, when they were saying that this has changed and that's changed, it's all Maliki Fiqh, isn't it? School of Medina, people, School of Medina. So when you had ulama saying things like Imam Abul Qasim al-Burzuli, when he challenged the notion of 600 years ago, more than that, about how the capital punishments have changed in the Sharia, him being the Shaykh al-Islam of his day and age. Pre-modernity, people, not a modern, challenging that, how you had a few generations after him, and from his progeny actually, Ibn Ardun saying about the inheritance and how the wife would inherit 50%. And if you went way before them, you see today this whole thing about political Islam, and who was one of the earliest Muslim Sunni scholars to challenge political Islam and the concept that is establishing a caliphate an obligation. One of the first legends of Islam, people, none other than Abu Ja'far ad-Dawudi, almost 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years ago, people. And he was from North Africa, a great Maliki scholar, one of the earliest people to also speak about that if you lived in non-Muslim territories, or how to set up systems of divorce and systems of ruling by having a community and a council. He's one of the early scholars who speaks on this as well. And he said in his day and age that this caliphate, he challenged this concept of political Islam, saying that it's not an obligation, but that it came as a sunnah of the Prophet. And he said that yes, the Prophet did it because the community was like that, but it's not an obligation to have a caliphate. And he used the hadith that when the Prophet had passed away, if it was an obligation, then there was a sufficient period of time when the Muslims had no leader and when they were still deciding. And during that period, they ought to have all been sinful if it was an obligation, but it was not. And so he kind of uses this as his evidence and other things. And he says that it was a sunnah that the Prophet, because there was a community, the Prophet gave it structure, so it came from the Prophet. As many other sunnahs from the Prophet to do with other things of life, right down to things like using a miswak to kind of brush your teeth, is a sunnah mu'akkada from the Prophet. So these things are advised by the Prophet in light of his community and the day and age that he was partaking in. Now, it was not an obligation for the Ummah, and that's almost 1,000 years ago, by none other than a Maliki, who was a Shaykhul Islam of his time, people. That's what we're talking about. That is this legacy. This is why when people say, why does Mufti Abu Layth have some of these crazy sounding fatwa? But are they really crazy if you're Maliki? It just sounds crazy to the non-Malikis because their stuff is so dull. They haven't come across this kind of hype. But, you know, the Maliki madhab's been kind of riding this wave for over 1,000 years. So, yeah. Posted about the universe. What are your thoughts on the video, on the universe being a simulation? I think that's interesting. I think, you know, in some ways, it could be a simulation. Don't you think so? But in like a highly advanced, as in, so for us it's real. In other words, let me simplify that. You see, what if we only exist in the mind of God? That would then be a simulation, wouldn't it? It would be like a simulation. Although, like the way an author, like let's say an author conjures up a story in a book, like I'm just saying, and the characters come to life. They do come to life, but they will go through all these events, but they only really are coming to life in the mind of the author. And through the author, other people can appreciate them. But what if in a much more complicated way, you know, an incredibly complicated, I'm just trying to give some baby analogies really, which are not entirely analogous, but in a much more complex manner, we are really in the mind of God. That's where we really exist. And in that way, we are perhaps some kind of a simulation. I think that would be really interesting because it would also answer many things on the problems of evil as well. It's a deep philosophical discussion, people. It's one for, you know, when you're a bit high. High on pious thoughts, people. High on dhikr. Not on something. Astaghfirullah. Judgmental. Anybody thinking otherwise, judgmental bigots, all of you. Right, wahdatul wujud. No, I'm not saying it's wahdatul wujud. Wahdatul wujud is a different concept of saying that we are all God. As in God permeates everybody. But what if we really just ain't real to start off with? That's a thought, that we are real as far as we're concerned, but what if we are just in the mind of God? It's interesting. These are thoughts. I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, at this simulation theory. And what if we humans are on the verge of cracking it, huh? Interesting, people. Interesting. I don't know. How does this simulation theory inform the problem of evil suffering? Well, if we are simply, in essence, in the mind of God, I guess it, in some ways, it reduces the whole realism of it, doesn't it? And thereby, because if the question is, did it really even exist? Is the question? obviously to us we do exist, but I'm just saying, if we were simply a simulation in the mind of God, then that gives some, it does give some explanation to this whole problem of evil as well. I'm not saying that is what we are, I'm just saying it's interesting. Okay, so people who already have declared me a kafir, just hold your horses. Just relax yourselves. I'm just saying it's interesting. You know, es muy interesante, mi gente, es muy interesante. That was Ibn Arabi's notion. We exist as part of the ilm of Allah. Okay, so that's kind of tying into, have you studied the works of Dr. Sayyid Hussein Nasr? No, I haven't. Problem of evil, yeah, the problem of evil is a whole complex thing. Another day, people, another day, another time. What else are we looking at? Let's take some other questions. The Ahmadiyya. What do you think of Sheikh Zakaria Kandalwi's commentary on the Muwatta? Yeah, sure, it's good. It's good. How did the... Wait there. Whoa, what do you... Sumerians know details about the solar system? How? The Sumerians were incredibly advanced for when they, you know, I mean, relatively speaking, for when they existed, you know, if you're going to go 6 to whatever 1,000 years ago. So they definitely, one could argue that maybe many things through perception and through the solar system is still perceptible to some extent, and especially people who have a great passion to observe the celestial kind of bodies and the celestial kind of just the planetary motion and things like this and the stars, that they would have observed things like that. Have you studied from Israr Ahmed? No, I haven't. Dr. Israr. Ever since you mentioned them, I've researched them a lot. I'm not sure who that is. Somebody's asking a question. Why do... right, but every time they're asking, they don't... Guys, try to make your question just one line so I can read it. Otherwise, I can't open up the remaining comment for some reason. Facebook isn't allowing me to do so. Why do scholars today fail to address the real issues facing us as youth? I don't know really, because I think maybe many of the scholars don't know what to say. And I think many of the scholars are so detached from actual reality that I'm not sure if their solutions would be helpful anyway. Saraj is asking a question about Ibrahim alayhi salam sacrificing his son and the claims of human sacrifice. I can't read the remaining part of that question. My take on the Ahmadiyya, right, is it possible for humans to communicate with the jinn? I don't believe so, no. What are your thoughts on da'wah? Are we obligated to proselytize? No, we're not obligated to proselytize. We are not obligated to convert people to Islam. If we do convert people to Islam, alhamdulillah, I mean, that's, you know, you conveyed the message. But we are living in interesting times when religion, we're living in, I won't say post-faith, but we're living in a post-religion era, where institutionalized religion, as an institutionalized religion, it is really quite, in my understanding, the West is kind of post all of that. Those things just won't work in that way, which I see almost as an opportunity to return to the original deen, which was not institutionalized, and it was a deen of fitrah, it was a faith, and it was not dogma. See, so this is the interesting thing, that when it was iman and not aqidah. You see, so this is, so I see this as an opportunity to return, to break free of these shackles of institutionalization, of organized religion, and to go back to what is this deen of fitrah, this millah that we have inherited from Ibrahim alayhi salam, which you see in the Quran. Ibrahim alayhi salam builds his whole thing on reason. You know, do you not see the stars like this? Do you not see how life and death is like this? Do you not? Constantly reasoning with people. did these statues really do that? How can statues who don't speak and don't do... He's a beacon of reason. And that is this millah that we have inherited from Ibrahim alayhi salam. How can we reason with paranormal sightings? There are no paranormal like ghosts. There are no ghosts. Yes, scholars detached from reality, living with in-laws. Fard. Anybody about to get married, my advice: do not live with your in-laws. Okay, do not, like, that's to the women, folks. Unless the guys are moving. You know, I don't know how widespread it is, but when I was studying in my days, I heard from Sri Lankan, some people that were from Sri Lanka. They said their custom was the guy moves in with the girl's family, but then all guys move in. So let's say, for example, there's 3 sisters living in a house. So now 3 different guys will move into that house with the parents. But that's seriously, that's how they had it. That's like so strange, isn't it? But that's how they had it. So I'm not mocking the culture, but I'm just saying I find it rather strange. But I would say, look, people, if you're about to embark on relationships, no to in-laws. Seriously, like, don't. You'll thank me later. Just take the advice for now. You'll thank me later. Make sure you live independently. Live on rent. Live even if you're struggling. But it's just not worth it, because I would say it's a greater ratio than 9 out of 10 even. Maybe not 10 out of 10, but you know, it's a great. Those relationships are pretty much kind of doomed. I would feel. What sect are you from? I'm not from any particular sect. Living with so I'm not from any sect. I am Sunni, but what were the Prophet's companions like physically, their strength? I mean, the Prophets generally, I mean, it's difficult to say. Obviously, we don't know the Prophets were from a long time ago, but if you mean our Prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was generally very healthy. They described the Prophet that even as he passed away, that he had a flat stomach. And I suppose the lifestyle that they lived was because they came from a culture that was a very warrior culture, and therefore I suppose one could say the nutrition was organic as well. But if anything, sometimes they did have malnutrition because people, you know, there was poverty and things like that. But that said, physically, you get the image that they were very healthy and strong in general. I mean, I don't know what that... It doesn't mean that they were like 6 foot kind of bodybuilders. It doesn't mean that. But they were very healthy. They were very strong. They definitely had strength to them. Just the thoughts of the kind of battles in which people participated in the past, the kind of heavy swords which people wielded around for hours on end. These kind of things in and of themselves demonstrate the kind of power and strength that would be required. So I think they were definitely physically very healthy and in good shape, very good shape, relatively speaking, to our day and age. I can't see the question of Sarraj. Sarraj, you keep posting the same question. I can only read one line which gets to the word human sacrifice. I can't read anything beyond that. Hijab in front of stepfather. I don't believe the stepfather. What do we mean by stepfather? Do you mean like... I mean, whatever, stepfather, I take it, so somebody marries a woman and she has a daughter. So this is what we're talking about, stepfather. So that is what you call in Arabic rabiba or rabaib. And no, she doesn't need to do hijab, and she will be to him like his daughter. Okay, so she doesn't need to do hijab. in front of him. What are the prophets? Have you ever been chased by the Tablighi Jamaat? Tablighi Jamaat are, you know, they have a time and a place. They're very sincere. Although now recently they've had huge trouble, haven't they? But they you know, they good spirited people. I love their kind of humbleness and good character, but it's just that they're very anti-development, like academic development, which is a problem. Do not live with in-laws. Awesome. Yeah. Been a long time since we've seen the old fitna-free Abu Layth. I don't know what that means. They should live. Why is the camera reversed? People were the prophets. You naughty. Where is Allah? Was the prophet a vegan? Whoa. What kind of a question is that? Is prophet a vegan? Prophet wasn't a vegan. Of course not. Most people were not vegans or vegetarians. That said, it's not haram to be a vegetarian. You can be a vegetarian or a vegan. It's just meat just tastes so good. See these canines right there, people. We've been made this way. What can we say? The English legal system or the Quranic law, which is better today? I think that's a ridiculous question, Kami Wakey. I think that's an absurd question. That which is better, the Quran or English legal system? I mean, first of all, the Quran is not a legal system. And secondly, the English legal system is not revelation. These are two entirely separate things. These are separate realms altogether that you're speaking about. And so I find that to be an absurd question. I find it to be as absurd as trying to say, well, which way is heavier, red or blue? I mean, what does that even mean? You know, you can't take incredibly complex processes like divine revelation, for example, and what it means for people, and then take an entirely separate process about a legal system just focused on law and order, which is also a good thing, that has its own history and its own thing, and then try to say, well, which is... I mean, that's an absurd question. It doesn't make any sense. Yes, one may argue that from the Quran you can also extract certain laws and orders and things like that, but I don't believe that the purpose of the Quran was simply that. Now you could say that part of the Quran came with that, it did, but that's not what I'm trying to say. Is this is an absurd kind of and it's these false propositions that are confusing the hell out of a lot of Muslims, and they're also tripping up other Muslims unnecessarily. I think that's definitely well absurd. Right, did Quraysh not reject the message based on reason? That's a good question. Did they? Sahaba conquering not equivalent to ISIS? Right, okay. First of all, did the Quraysh, right people, I'm going to wrap this up, well, let's say last few minutes. So Quraysh rejecting the message, did they do so based on reason? I don't think they did. Because if it was based on reason, they wouldn't be worshipping the idols that they were resorting to. Because that was not built on reason. It was not a reason-based faith that they had. Yes, they mocked, but they actually mocked what was reason. You know, they said, "Hada ma wajadna alayhi aba'ana." They said, this is what we found our forefathers upon. Why should we leave it for you? And why should we leave it for what you're saying? And in fact, the Quran mocked them for saying things like, oh, okay, can you do miracles for us then? Can you make a spring appear here? Can you make something come out of the sky? Can you make a... And the Quran mocked them and said, what do you think you're asking? You know, what is this? That's not what revelation is about. So, you know, it's amazing. On this note, I want to say something that, look, I was speaking to somebody recently about jinn possession, demonic possessions and stuff like this. And it's amazing that, look, we as Muslims, and I saw somebody, by the way, that's one conversation going on, and then I've seen some comments online, and then just yesterday I saw somebody commenting on a video of mine from last year on demonic possessions, basically just saying, this guy's lost the plot. Although that sentence of theirs would be difficult for me to argue against. But they were saying this person's lost the plot, and of course jinn possessions exist, blah, 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 you know, all this kind of usual stuff. Look, I want to say something here. Let me just... The comments seem to have moved on and my screen isn't moving along with them. You see, I want to say something. Now, check this out, people. Pay attention, right? I'd like you to think about this. I was having a detailed discussion with somebody, and they asked me, look, how would you explain certain things then? And I said, well, for example, certain neural activity in the brain, there could be processing, psychological processing taking place, there could be dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, there could be many things. And somebody was asking me about magic as well in a different conversation and said, well, how would you explain this? And I said, well, actually, you can explain it because through this. Somebody said, well, I heard sounds and I heard this. And I said, well, this could be explained through certain things. And we do this all the time, heuristics, and we use them. And on a similar note, somebody had asked me once, they said, well, somebody walked into a room and he felt a slap in the face, his eye was stinging, looked around, nobody was there, but he really felt it. And I explained that, look, sometimes that you could get things like certain nerves popping, you could get a kind of like a stinging sudden pain. These things are... Now, in all of these situations, these people dismiss these things as being absurd. Now, just bear with me, people. Just let's just see what these people are doing. They're saying this is absurd. That this explanation that it's psychological, that it's nerves, for example, interacting with each other, or that certain transmitters or certain psychedelic effects or certain heuristics or certain things is absurd. It's crazy. This is crazy. And then the thing they resort to is, oh, it's just a demon, it's a ghost. It's magic. I mean, look, just pause for a moment and just listen to what I'm saying. They will dismiss this as ridiculous, and they will embrace demons as, oh yeah, it's just demons. It's just magic. Like, okay. Like, this was absurd. Neurotransmitters was absurd, or neural activity, or psychedelic effects, or these things was absurd, or it being multiple personality disorder, or dissociative identity disorder, or schizophrenia is absurd. So it must be somebody casted a magic spell. like look what people are going from. They're going from, like, they're describing general phenomenological explanations as crazy, and they're embracing bloody fairy tale stories, like, don't be stupid, it can't be schizophrenia. Yeah, somebody casted a magic spell on the person. Like, this is what you're embracing. Wah, 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 wah. What's that? What is it? Go haram ke raaste se wo pahunch gaye khuda tak. Teri reh guzar se jaate to kuch aur baat hoti. That's, you see, this is the, like, look at what people are they're rejecting the scientific and saying, no, that sounds crazy, and they're embracing, like, wacko mumbo jumbo, like, oh, it's ghosts and a person sitting over there is casting a magic spell. And they'll easily accept that. They'll digest that so easily. And that's the situation what we're in. Yeah. So people, it is what it is, I guess. It is what it is. Right, I think we should wrap up. Somebody had asked a question, do you think that the Sahaba conquering and liberating is like ISIS? Not at all. Let me tell you something. The Prophet ﷺ and the companions brought life to people. They liberated and they brought freedoms. They were never in a part of a death cult. They never encouraged the kind of butchering. The Prophet, it hurt the Prophet to see that people wouldn't embrace the faith. He was never about, let's kill them and send them to hell. That was anything but the message of the Prophet. Anybody saying that is lying. Or they're just outright ignorant. The Prophet never rejoiced in the death of kuffar or them rejecting the message. It hurt him. That, you know, إِنَّكَ لَفَاجِعٌ, you know, that the Prophet, Allah, it describes the Prophet ﷺ that you, like, your heart is about to explode out of grief for what you're going through. So that's not true. So that is not true that they were some kind of death cult going to just execute people and stuff like this. The Prophet could have done that if he wanted. And he had many opportunities to do that, but he did not do that. Right, another thing, another quick question. Somebody had asked about things like, look, metaphor in the Quran and stuff like this. And I've answered before. Because I saw some video. I saw a video by I had this forwarded to me by a few people, and I saw it on Facebook by Muhammad Hijab, speaking about a dialogue we'd had and making some, and he extended a dialogue to some of the Sheikh, who we will, inshallah, I'm more than happy to have a dialogue with that brother. But I mean, the point is, he spoke himself. Muhammad Hijab said something about, oh, Mufti Abu Layth has got the views of Ibn Sina or these people, or and then he said, I'm surprised he had the views of the Jahmiyyah. I went away and I read the books of the Jahmiyyah, and I thought, well, first of all, the Jahmiyyah don't even have any books. So I don't know what books you've been reading to start off with, yeah? So that, because he said, I went away and I read the books of the Jahmiyyah, and I thought, oh, Mufti Abu Layth's got the... I thought, well, first of all, they don't even have any books, so nobody really knows what the Jahmiyyah believed. But that's a different discussion for a different day. But my point is that he said, look, oh, he doesn't believe in the afterlife, or he doesn't believe in this, or he doesn't believe in that. And I've not said that. And this is why I felt kind of disappointed that why would either he genuinely fail to understand anything I was saying. Fair enough, could happen, but then that reflects poorly on his comprehension. Or that goes to show that he's misrepresenting, or just, you know, intentionally misrepresenting our dialogue, which I think is, once again, highly problematic. But the point is that we had a discussion on the afterlife, and my views are very clear that, look, the afterlife, when it comes to the afterlife, we as Muslims believe in an afterlife. What is the nature of that afterlife? The ontology, the ontological reality is incredibly complex, and we don't understand it. The imagery used in the Quran, is that literal, or is it non-literal? Now, I don't know why some people feel that they've got the monopoly of saying, oh, it must be literal, and anybody who says it's non-literal is somehow not a proper Muslim. I mean, who gave them that authority? They're saying, as I often say, saying, your dad's deen, you can't chuck people in and out. Let's just begin greater than hell and heaven. Greater than, and this isn't about Muhammad Hijab, this is about anybody. Right, so I'm not restricting this to Muhammad Hijab. I'm saying this to anybody and everybody who has a problem with this. Let's begin with the greatest of discussions, and that is God. Now, God in the Quran God in the Quran, most Muslims have the understanding, most Muslims have had the understanding throughout Islamic history that references, that all imagery surrounding God in the Quran is non-literal. As in, it's metaphoric or it's symbolic. And all of these are used. Now, symbolism is a kind of metaphor. Now, there's different types of metaphor. I mean, there's allegories, there's simple metaphors, but there's also things like symbolisms referring to concepts and abstract ideas or abstract concepts which are quite complicated. And therefore, you use symbolism. Now, and I understand the Salafiyah, and I understand that brothers like Muhammad Hijab and others obviously adhere to the Salafi Aqidah, which is a literal reading of the Quran predominantly. Now, that is, you see, now the problem with that is they take a literal beginning with God. So if you open an Aqidah book of the Salafis, they will tell you God has one leg. Okay, so this is actually the Aqidah of all Salafis, that God has one leg and it's half a leg. So God has half a leg, which is the lower half of a leg, and he has 1 foot. And this is actually in all their Aqidah books. Now, to me, that's obviously absurd. I find that ridiculous. Anybody who believes God has 1 leg, I think is stupid. Like that to me as a concept is a stupid concept. And I think it ridicules religion. But that said, this is why, because they take everything as literal. Now, to me, that would be symbolic. It's not a metaphor, it's symbolism, unless, obviously, symbolism can be a form of metaphor. So these things are symbolic speech in the Quran, like the istawa al-arsh. These kind of things are symbolism. See, when Allah says He is nuru samawati wal ard, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Now, what is this? This is symbolism. In a similar way, how hell and heaven is defined, some people take it literally. There are many people, like I said, there's people who take that God has 1 leg, literally, and all Salafis pretty much believe God has just 1 leg. And that too, half a leg. He doesn't even have a full leg. He has just the bottom half of a leg. That is actually what they believe. That's their Aqidah. It's in all their books. Likewise, there are many Muslims who believe in a literal. So they will say that it has to be literal, there has to be rivers of honey, there has to be rivers of milk and rivers of alcohol, there has to be rivers of alcohol in heaven. This is literal. To other people, that may be a metaphor. To other people, that may be symbolism. It may be symbolic. But why does one person have a monopoly over the other? The Prophet never went and checked, and there was no inquisition on how you understood these kind of verses. One thing people understand is that we don't believe that this life is everything. But what is the afterlife? I would generally say we don't have an understanding. We don't truly, it is much more incredibly complex that we don't understand it. Now, people have said to me, do you believe that Allah has to punish people? And I've said no, and that has been the belief of the majority of Muslims, that Allah does not have to punish people. Fakhruddin al-Razi writes that clearly, that Allah doesn't have to punish anybody. That has been his belief. And as to the belief that do heaven and hell actually exist right now as we're speaking, that's a difference of opinion. Many people felt that they don't exist. They will only in the afterlife exist, because how can they exist if the judgment hasn't existed, if the next life hasn't begun? Some people have felt maybe they do exist. But that, once again, has been a classical debate. It's not something which is, oh my God. So I don't see what the whole point of these kind of things. First of all, I'm trying to confuse people. I don't see the point. Secondly, on why not accepting that these things in the Quran can be incredibly complicated? Why do they have to be so simple? Like if I ask them, or if I ask any of the Salafis, how would you interpret the verse to do with Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth? And when he says, and the example of his light is like that of and he goes on to give that of a lamp, and it's in a mishkat and so on and so forth. How would you? They'll just probably say, we don't know. But, you seem to know all the other things about God. So, what? So, or would you say this is symbolism? And if you can accept it in certain places, why can't you accept symbolic behavior and everybody's different. I'm not saying people can't take it literally. People can take literal. There are people who do believe there's going to be literally a river of honey and a river of milk, and there's going to be shade, and it's going to be like, you know, there's going to be servant boys that are beautiful, and they have to kind of like go around them and work for them day and night. And there's people who believe in that literal thing, and there's other people who believe that's a kind of metaphor, kind of symbolism. And it's how you read something. Let me share something, like as an example. Let me give you an example to maybe make this. Let's take a poem. Let me just give you a quick line as an example. Now here's a poem by a poet I'm very fond of, John Elia. Now there's a line of his poem where he says, वो जो तामीर होने वाली थी लग गई आग उस इमारत में. Now just take that sentence here. This is part of a beautiful poem of his, by the way. But he says, and that which was yet to be constructed, that mansion has been consumed by fire. Or that imarat can mean building as well. Now let's just take this line, yeah? So, वो जो तामीर होने वाली थी लग गई आग उस इमारत में. Now this can be literal. Now let's take this as a literal thing. This could be literal, that somebody was building a building and it's had fire set onto it. Yeah, so it's been consumed by fire. That's a literal understanding. This could be a simple low-level metaphor, as in somebody. If we're taking a metaphor, let's take as an example. Let's say somebody was. I don't know. They were building something else. It wasn't actually a mansion, but they were purchasing something, or they were doing something, and it got destroyed. Yeah. So it could have been a huge investment that flopped. It could have been imagine somebody had a lot of wealth and it got stolen. So as a metaphor, you said, let's say, वो जो तामीर होने वाली थी लग गई आग उस इमारत में. Now, that metaphor would sit. Or let's say this was, you were trying to have a relationship and you were going to have a wedding or a relationship and it collapsed and it failed. Or you had a marriage and it got destroyed. Now, this could serve as a low-level metaphor here. That, look, वो जो तामीर होने वाली थी लग गई आग उस इमारत में. Now, let's take it a grade apart into symbolism. Let's say this was more than that. Let's say this was symbolic for life. It's speaking about life as a whole. All the construction was all the aspirations throughout life, the achievements, the journey, the interactions, the experience, that everything, that what this person was concocting, what this person was amassing, was building and constructing. With death, it all dilapidates and dissipates. That all these emotions, these memories, these experiences, these interactions, these values that this person has amassed, that this person has experienced, they've enjoyed throughout life, that wo jo ta'mir hone wali thi, because the person doesn't know when they'll die. Lag gayi aag us imarat mein. That, you know, because the person was constructing this and they continue to do so throughout their life. But with death, everything falls apart. Now, something as simple as that poem could be understood on all dimensions. You could take that literally, that somebody was building a mansion. You could take that as just a low-level metaphor for an incident. Or you could take it as symbolic, to refer to greater abstract complex ideas that give, you know, that bring about a myriad of interpretations and representations. How do you understand this poem? This is as an example. This is language, people. It is not, you know, it's not to say one person is categorically wrong when they understand something. But it's our level of understanding. It's our way of understanding. You know, Allah says that خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, that Allah created insan, عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ, that He taught him expression. Not speech, expression. So I think like this, so this is what I'm trying to say, that in the Quran too is predicated in language. That this whole thing is built on language, so people will understand things differently all the time. Some people, it doesn't necessarily negate other understandings. Some understandings, maybe just people see them much more dynamic. Like to me, I see things like that the concept of the afterlife as much more complex, much more complicated than just saying, oh, there'll be rivers of honey and alcohol and people will, you know, just jump in these rivers and that's what life will be. But as I said before, I mean, what's to say in the akhirah there will be gender? What's to say there will, you know, Ibn Rushd said, what if it's just all, I mean, he interpreted it as it'll just be consciousness. But my point is, what do we actually know? We know very little. Allah says, you know, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You've only been given a small amount of understanding and knowledge. So that's my kind of way of looking at things. I don't see these things as, I read them as a non-literal reading, with things full of metaphor, of symbolism, of that pointing to greater, deeper, abstract, conceptual meanings from the Quran that we can draw. But yeah, so that's my 2 pence, inshallah, on that. Before I wrap up, I guess I'll give you 1-2 more lines from, since I said that poem, of John Elia. He finishes it off. No, he has actually, I'll give you 1-2 other lines in there. He says, अब तो बस आदतों की वर्जिश है, रूह शामिल नहीं शिकायत में. That now it's just, this is just we just act out of habit. We no longer have spirit in this matter. That even when we're complaining, like he's speaking about there, I guess, about relationships, but even when we're complaining, it's just out of habit now. It's no longer spirited the way it ought to be. And then he says, Zindagi kis tarha basar hogi, dil nahi lag raha mohabbat mein. Oh, John Elia was a legend, honestly. He says, like, tell me, how will this life now get by? That I've begun to get tired with this thing called love. That how will now I get by? Like, what will become of me now? But yeah, so people, with that, inshallah, much love. I'm gonna wrap this up, inshallah. If you do reach out to me, Facebook, the works, people, Snapchat, Malm 2014. By the way, I have noticed a lot of people have been paying attention. If you reach out to me, do introduce yourselves. It just makes the world of difference. You know, I'm speaking to somebody. Bring yourself to life for me. You know, like, tell me a bit about yourself. It allows me to, one, know that you're genuine. Two, it allows me to sometimes thereby take an interest in responding with more detail. Cool. So, alright people, salam from Atlanta. Alright, I thought you almost said Atlantis, the lost city. People, inshallah, as always, much love. Take very good care of yourselves. Next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.